So this is the Tucson Herpetological Society, and our mission is there on the screen. We are in the Sonoran Desert, the traditional homelands of the Tohono Yoeme, and many other indigenous groups. As a result, there are many place names named after herps. I work at the Desert Laboratory on Tumamok Hill, or Chemamog Doag, which means Horned Lizard Mountain. And across the way in the Catalinas is Baba Doag, or Toad or Frog Mountain. This is the west face of Push Peak. And if you can't make out the dorsal surface of a giant toad, I outlined it there for you to see. Um, Anyhow, this is our most recent issue of Sonoran Herpetologist. It's probably our biggest issue. Covers topics like parthenogenesis and whiptail lizards, climate change, and many other things. This is so good that we got compliments from Harry Green and Joe Mendelson this month about how wonderful this publication is. So we're doing really great, and we appreciate your support. We just finished reviewing 7 proposals for our Chuck Lowe Herpetology Research Fund. We chose 4. And we, in order to stretch out our funds and support as wide a variety of projects, we did only partially fund all but 1. So there's some really fun things there. One thing that we're really excited about is a review of the amphibians and reptiles of the Tohono Nation, which we hope to establish a better relationship with that nation, that community of people. Microhabitat and use and activity of side-blotched lizards. Oh, that's not Joe's project. Joe's actually looking at a novel sunshine virus in snakes in the Southwest. So we supported that because we felt it would be good to be on the early edge of understanding what's going on with Southwestern snakes. We've awarded a student at the Universidad de la Sierra in Sonora, estimating predation pressure on Salvadora hexalepis, using clay models and analyzing color pattern. And Ana Giselle, who is reviewing the herpetology of the Pinacate region. So this sort of falls in line with our mission to uphold students and postdocs in Mexico as much as here in the United States. And then we recently received a proposal for the Sonoran Desert toad. This would be the 5th or 6th season that we support research on this species, and we very much look forward to coming up, analyzing that information and producing a report of some sort. And another team, independent of us or parallel with us, has already produced data for that many years and is actively working to get it listed, get its status on the red list upgraded. So you can support everything that we do by buying some merchandise, a donation, or renewing your membership. We have some great hats. I see one person at least is wearing one. I'm not sure if this is still ongoing, but the companion volumes to Snakes of Arizona are still being produced. And this website is where you can volunteer observations or information for that. There are 2 Gila monster studies that are going on. If you want more information, you can contact Paul Mayer, who's working in the Tucson area, and one of our board members, Anthony Pawlicki, who is working in the Boot Heel of New Mexico. Coming up, there's a volunteer opportunity to help restore a wetland for not just herps, but life in general in the Piloncillos. And further along is Biology of the Pit Vipers 5. The THS will have a table there, and we'll be selling merchandise and used books. And it should be a good time. Our previous meetings are recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel. And next month, Dennis Caldwell is going to talk to us about the work that he does in riparian areas of the Southwest or Southern Arizona. Tonight we have Bob Hansen coming all the way from California. He was the editor of Herpetological Review from 1991 to 2021, a 30-year tenure. He received the Presidential Award for Lifetime Achievement in Herpetology from the Society for the Study of Amphibians and Reptiles in 2015. In 2023, he was the recipient of the Alison Haskell Award for Excellence in Herpetofaunal Conservation from the Partners in Amphibian and Reptile Conservation. His research interests include systematics of plethodontid salamanders in California and king snakes in Mexico. He also leads a long-running study of snake ecology in the Mojave Desert, now in its 46th year. Currently, he's an affiliated researcher with the Museum of Vertebrate Zoology at UC Berkeley. With his colleague Jackson Shedd, he is the author of the recently published Princeton Field Guide to California Amphibians and Reptiles, which you can purchase here. I plan on at least purchasing two. So this is the first time I've met Bob in person. We've sort of corresponded over the years, and I'm very happy to welcome him to our meeting. What's that? Perfect.
Well, Robert, thank you for the introduction and the invitation. I'm actually a longtime member of the THS. Dave Hardy was a good friend of mine, but this is my first time being here in person. So I've long admired the THS. And for those of you who've paid attention to regional herp societies over the years, you know that sort of the advent of the internet, I think, precipitated the withering of regional herp societies, and the ones that persisted tended to go the pet route. But THS has always been an outlier, both for the quality of speakers and the diversity of membership. So I really admire the people that have made it go. We all know that in every organization, there's a handful of key people that get all the work done. So if you're one of those, thank you. And I'll echo Robert's comments about the last issue of Sonoran Herpetologist. Howard Clark is doing a great job with that. It was a massive issue. It was quite wonderful. So again, thanks for being here. And this is very much also, you know, it's a book talk. So Jackson Shedd is my partner in crime with this project. And I want to start though with this idea that was posited a number of years ago by the famous biologist E.O. Wilson. And he had this idea that humans have an innate tendency to seek connections with nature, and he called it his biophilia hypothesis. And it was very interesting to me because it resonated, and I thought, oh yeah, that sounds pretty reasonable. I modified it ever so slightly though, to state that it's an innate attraction to and affinity for wild things and wild places, and importantly, an incurable affliction. And that's of course not necessarily a bad thing as far as all of us are concerned. And of course, you might be a biophiliac if you would rather be, you know, in a beautiful pond searching for garter snakes as opposed to sitting on your couch playing a video game. And this is a fun thing to talk about in any group of herp folks, and that is to ask you, what's your earliest herp memory? Were you a little kid? Was it something later on in life? I'll tell you what mine is. I was probably 5 years old. My parents belonged to a card playing group that got together several times a year. And most of the adults had little kids. So we were brought along and allowed to play, and then we'd crash out on the floor. One home on a Saturday night, just before it got dark, I was in their backyard. They had a little water feature. It had a pond. There were toads in the pond. And I thought that was just the coolest thing. And honestly, in my 5-year-old brain, I would have been happy if my parents had left me there to live with the toads. I would have been perfectly happy. So looking back, that was I don't remember much from when I was 5. I got in trouble in kindergarten for putting sand in a girl's hair, and I remember these toads. So it resonated with me, the fact that I can recall this quite a few years later. So anyway, something for each of you to think about and discuss. So growing up, though, as it turned out, I was in a pretty good spot. We had a cabin. So this is a painting of our cabin there at the upper right. My grandfather, who I never knew, was a cattle rancher slash physician. And one year he took barn lumber in 1922 from the Central Valley of California up into the Sierra Nevada, and he built this cabin. It was in the Tule River Canyon, the North Fork of the Middle Fork Tule River. And that is where I spent I call it my feral kid childhood, not quite like the little dude in Mad Max, but more like the kid on the lower right. I trout fished that stream every day, sometimes twice a day. I knew every nook and cranny where the fish would hang out. I saw that stream at its most raging, like the time 12 inches of rain fell in a 24-hour period. It took out 3 cabins. And then by midsummer, it was a pretty benign place, great for swimming and fishing and all of that. I also, though, vividly remember when I was probably 10, inmates bust in from a nearby conservation camp. And their job was to fill sandbags to divert flow to retrieve the body of a 10-year-old boy. I think he was part of a scout group who'd gone tubing. It was an inner tube ride gone bad. And he became stuck beneath boulders, submerged. And this had been a couple of days now. And so to retrieve the body, I remember this big, thick rope stretched across the river with a hook. And that was how they were going to get him out. So that left an impression on me. And I was probably more cautious, but I will say that my parents just let me run. I was out the door. I could be gone when I wasn't fishing. I was looking for mountain king snakes, scorpions, whatever. It was a great deal. We had no TV. There was no mail, no newspaper. The radio station got maybe 2 channels. One was full-time religious programming. The other at least got Giants games in the summer. So that was my salvation. But I was there like the day after school got out in June through Labor Day weekend. And, in retrospect, you couldn't have asked for a better setting for a kid who didn't know wanted to become a naturalist. Well, when I was up there, I turned a lot of rocks, obviously, and I found lots of skinks. And according to the 1966 edition of the Western Field Guide, that was our Herping Bible by Robert C. Stebbins, there was one species of skink that was present in the Southern Sierra. So the red dot on the screen is the approximate location of our cabin. And as you can see, there's only one skink, and that is the Gilbert skink, Eumeces gilberti, now Plestiodon gilberti. That was a possibility there. Well, the deal was every skink I found had a blue tail.
The laser.
Okay. Do we need a laser? I don't know if we need a laser, but maybe. So it was a bit mystifying to me that I could never find an adult skink. Out of all the dozens and dozens of skinks, they all had blue tails. And by definition, they were juvenile Gilbert skinks because the adults, of course, lose all that color and they become this uniform olive brown. One day, this is what happened. Flip a rock, and here is a juvenile Gilbert skink tending to a nest of eggs. And it hit me. These aren't Gilbert skinks. These are Western skinks, Plestiodon stiltonianus. And so my childhood discovery was actually the basis for the range map change in Stebbins' second edition, which came out in 1985, because he sent me all of his maps to review. And if we look at what it looks like today, here's his map from 1966. Again, the red dot, and then his distribution map for Stiltonianus. This is what it looks like per the book that we just published, that Jackson and I published. So you can see in the Southern Sierra, we've got several more or less disjunct populations of Western skinks. So any discussion of a new herp book certainly needs to pay tribute to Dr. Robert C. Stebbins, who was just a master naturalist, wonderful illustrator, and superb communicator of science to a broader public. Not shown on this screen, but his first two books in 51 and 54 really were wonderful natural history compendia and set the stage for really the foundation for everything that would come afterwards, including, of course, our book. So with our book, let's look at species numbers by state. California is at 209, and that includes established exotic species. And you can see this is a fair bit higher than any of our other Western states. The herpetofauna is distributed. It's dominated by lizards, snakes, and salamanders, relatively few turtles, and a fair number of frogs and toads. 29% of our natives are endemic. Maybe endemic isn't the right word, but at least restricted to the state of California. Interestingly, we have no endemic turtles, low numbers of frogs and snakes, but salamanders, 2/3 of our salamander species are found exclusively within California borders. We've got some evolutionary novelties. The giant salamanders, the torrent salamanders, the tailed frogs, all of which are found in the Pacific Northwest and reach their southern range limits in Northern California. And then we have the curious case of hydromates, the web-toed salamanders. 5 species in California, 7 in Southern Europe. We're about to add to that count for California. And then we've lost some species. These are still present in surrounding states, but they are entirely gone from California. And not surprisingly, they were all associated with wetlands, which of course are far and away the most imperiled ecosystems in the American Southwest. So how come we have so many species? Well, it's probably obvious to most of you because you pay attention to these sorts of things, but California is a big state. It spans 9.5 degrees of latitudinal range. It's got a wonderfully complex historical geology, and all of that proximity to the Pacific Ocean gives us lots of climatic diversity. So you mix all that together, and it's a great engine for speciation. And in my case, we were running around a lot in the course of making this field guide, tracking down things to photograph. One week, I'm at the northwestern corner of the state, which looks at that top image where you got moss on the rocks and ferns and redwoods. And then, we've got 3 of our major North American deserts, Great Basin, Mojave, and the Colorado subdivision of the Sonoran Desert. But the next week I'm down at the border wall with Mexico. So all of that. So anyway, it's a tremendously diverse place with lots of species diversity. Now, a fun thing to do, and we can really do this for any region, any other state, and I don't know that it's been done, but if we look at just like a species checklist, I call it a species accumulation curve. And if we break this out by decade, you can see starting way back, we actually had a few species described by Linnaeus, not based on California specimens, but transcontinental species like Coluber constrictor. I came from South Carolina. Well, that's a California species, right? So we count that. But the numbers were super low until the mid-1800s, coincident with the gold rush. We've got surveys for railroad routes, military surveys. Most of those had naturalists along, often doubling as the physicians. They would collect material, send it to the East Coast, like the Smithsonian, to be studied. And so there was this tremendous period of discovery and description in the latter half of the 1800s. And you can obviously, you can see that here. But what's interesting is that although things have leveled off somewhat, we're still at a rate of about 4.5 species per decade, adding to our species count for California. And some of that is legitimate new discoveries, eureka moments. You flip a rock and say, oh my God, this is new. And then there's others that are introductions. So these 4, by the way, are all new things. Or you have taxonomic revisions, often precipitated by application of the latest, greatest molecular tools, like this salamander complex that went from 1 species to 5. And then introduction of exotic species that we know all too well. Now, one thing I just will throw out because it's interesting to think about, if we look at INAT observations, and I updated this, I think, as of January, just say turtles, California. The big list there on the left is all the species, and you can see that many of those are sort of one-offs, right? But then the color differences, the light blue, those are native species to California. The yellow ones are native to the US, but not to California. And the green ones are not even native to the US. And then if we pull out kind of the big three, which are red-eared sliders, the two species of western pond turtles, and desert tortoises, you can look at the numbers here. So red-eared sliders, of course, comprise 60% of all of the turtle observations by people who are out in nature. Now, admittedly, some of those sightings are in urban parks, so it's not unbiased. But I think the bottom line is that chances are for the average person encountering a turtle in California, it's better than even chances that it's not going to be a native species. So if we then look at the kind of the same thing, species accumulation curve, but just with introduced stuff, and we include species. So each dot is a new species that's not native to California. To get on here, there has to be evidence of establishment. So we observe a common snapping turtle digging a nest, or we observe hatchlings. So it can't be just, I saw, whatever, this exotic turtle in an urban park. We don't count any of those. But again, the numbers are super low until about 1970. And then look what happens. It just takes off. I don't know if that's due to the increasing popularity of reptiles, especially as pets, but this shows no signs of abating. And if you're at all familiar with Southern California, it's got a relatively benign climate. You've got a plethora of both anthropogenic and also native habitats. So especially for lizards, I think from the Middle East, there's all kinds of opportunities for new things to become established. And in fact, some of them are. So with this field guide, Jackson and I wanted to produce a guide that we wanted to find if we, in a perfect world, when we were like 20 years old, what would we want? And we found a publisher that let us get away with it, right? So we sort of threw everything in, but we wanted to illustrate, rather than a single example per species, we wanted to show subspecies. We want to show male-female differences, juvenile differences, if there's geographic or even within population differences. We wanted to illustrate all amphibian larvae at multiple developmental stages. We wanted to include the latest information on exotics. We wanted accurate range maps that reflected both historical and contemporary distributions. And then we wanted our species accounts to be derived from primary literature and our own field work. So range maps, we're sort of connoisseurs of range maps. We appreciate ones that are really well done. And we like maps that convey maximum information without too much clutter. So what we decided on was this map that showed relief. It shows county lines, so you have some points of reference. We didn't include highways, didn't include biomes, because I think that just gets too busy. But this as an example with our three species of spadefoots shows this, this goal of depicting historical and current ranges. So in the case of the Western spadefoot, which is shown in blue, you can see the big outline is the historical distribution. All of the solid stuff.
All right. Some people are not seeing the presentation, so I want to make sure that.
Okay, so we will pause.
Oh, that would do it.
But you're seeing the slides, just not me. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Robert. So, and what the gaps are showing, of course, is California Central Valley, which is now mostly ag and cities and so forth. So this is the general scheme. So we developed a whole bunch of range maps. We sent these out to colleagues for review, and I'll use this as an example. This is a salamander called an encetina. There are 7 subspecies, all of which occur in California. The map on the left was our first attempt at this, and we thought this was a thing of beauty. We were so proud of this, and we sent it out to about 50 people, and a couple of people said, hey, we really like your map, but I'm like red-green colorblind. I cannot see the distinction between some of these colors. So that was just an aha moment for us. Yeah, that was over our heads, and we were so grateful that was pointed out, but also they alerted us to this really cool free app called Color Oracle. And it allows you to simulate various forms of color vision deficiency. And so we opted for red-green because that affects like 4.5% of the adult population. So this map, shown under the filter there on the right of Color Oracle, you can see that some of those things just sort of converge and it just doesn't work. So it's back to the drawing board, seeing which colors played well with each other. So a revised map is there on the left, and then again through the lens of Color Oracle on the right. It's not perfect, but it works, and it helps toward our goal of universal access, which is allowing as many people as possible to obtain as much information from our maps. Photography, like many of you, Jackson and I have a large inventory of pretty herp pictures, in nature, right? Like this California tiger salamander on leaves. But for a field guide where your primary objective is identification, we wanted to isolate things on a plain background. So that was what that was all about. Now remember, we've got 209 species and we're wanting to show all this variation. So some of these things are super easy, gopher snakes, side blotch lizards, but others are federally protected or they're rare. And so we had a lot of help in rounding things up. So this happens to be a federally listed, this is the Alameda striped racer or striped whip snake, Masticophus lateralis euxanthus. And we were fortunate enough to connect with a crew that was trapping these. And this is, me in action, but that's kind of what we did. San Francisco garter snakes with a USGS crew. Foothill yellow-legged frog, also federally listed, out here in the field, set up streamside with camera gear. Santa Cruz long-toed salamander, been on the federal endangered list since like the beginning in the late 60s. UC Santa Cruz has a breeding colony going, so we had access to those animals. If you've ever photographed turtles or attempted to photograph turtles, you maybe can understand or appreciate the challenge involved. It's one thing to use a long lens and get a basking turtle on a log. It's quite another to get them on a white background, get them to have their limbs out, their head out, and not instantly turn away and run from you. It was exasperating, quite frankly. And they don't respond to verbal encouragement. A fun little story when we were out, this is right near the Mexican border. And we went out there, we needed to do some night work. And we got out there in the afternoon to look over the landscape. And as we were out there, we noticed this increasing numbers of Border Patrol vehicles showing up and bringing in trailers and big lights and all this stuff. So we touched base with a couple guys and said, hey, just so you know, we're on the other side of the highway tonight. We're going to be wandering around pretty late with lights, and this is what we're doing. They, okay, no problem, no problem. So we do our thing, and then about midnight, we're done. We're sitting on a tailgate enjoying a beverage, and the desert air is completely still. We can hear everything from across the way, and that's what we're looking at. And I can hear the BP guys talking. And finally, one of them, they're concerned about us. They all haven't gotten the word. And one of them says, what are those guys doing over there? And another guy says, oh, they're just looking for snakes and shit. So we were good. We did find some great things that evening. It was a very successful evening there on the border. Columbia spotted frogs, traveling quite a ways to find those. And this is the result. So the color plates reflected lots of travel, lots of help from people, but this is the end result: zebra tails, and then of course Coleonyx sotakai, which is one of California's rarest lizards. Some nice snakes. Even exotic species. We have 2 species of Anolis established in California now, and we also have Jackson's chameleons. And I learned a lot about trying to photograph Jackson's chameleons. They turned out pretty well. So just a comment about amphibian larvae. So tadpoles and salamander larvae. These are like the poor stepchildren of field guides. They're often given short shrift. In some cases, there's one book I can think of that sort of pretends that they don't exist. That, oh, we just go from here to there, and there's no tadpole, there's no salamander larvae. In some books, you get tank shots that are attractive, but maybe not useful for ID. In others, you have sort of rudimentary pen and ink drawings. Well, fortunately, Jackson Shedd, my co-author, is a superb artist. And so we're going to do things a little bit differently. Now, if you recall, Sonoran desert toads are gone from California, right? But we still had to include them. There are no good reference photographs or published images of Alvarius tads. So Jackson came to Arizona. He connected with Randy Babb, and they went out, and Jackson sent this photo and this caption. This photo was taken after wading through cow shit infested bath temp water up to our chests in North Tank, Arizona, looking for Berlanderi and Alvarius tads to photo and work from. We saw a single fish. So it wasn't all easy. But the end result from Jackson's artwork, this is a northwestern salamander, Ambystoma gracili, finishing up on the left, and then the final plate. And again, what we try to do for most of these species is show different developmental stages, so early, mid, and late. And these things are exquisite. Some southwestern bufonids. That's Woodhouse's toad on the left. So, I mean, the guy's good. I'll just say that. Now, sea turtles. So there's 7 species of sea turtles worldwide. 5 of those at least occasionally show up in California waters. We're not chasing down sea turtles, right? And trying to photograph them on a white background. So it's like, Jackson, tag, you're it, dude. You got to create some nice paintings. So this progression of green sea turtle starts with a pencil sketch. Then you start adding in a little bit of detail, a little bit more. And then the final one is here. And then all 5 of our sea turtles are shown this way along with shell diagrams. So again, these are also quite spectacular illustrations. I want to share that there were many challenges associated with getting photographic subjects, but 2 stories perhaps of interest. One is Xanthussia reversiana, the island night lizard. It is a big bomber night lizard. It is the size, it's bigger than an adult Gilbert skink. That gives you some perspective. They are restricted to 3 islands off the coast of Southern California, 3 of the southern Channel Islands. 2 of those are military bases closed to public. The third, Santa Barbara Island, is part of Channel Islands National Park and theoretically is open. However, the place for boats to land was destroyed in a storm a number of years ago. It's never been repaired. So theoretically, the island is open to visitors if you can parachute in, if you could hire a fishing boat and then kayak, because there's no beach. It is water and then it's rock. So yeah, you could kayak or swim and, you know, hope your photo gear stays dry. That wasn't going to happen for us. We then learned about some lizards that were collected from San Nicolas Island, one of the military bases, some years earlier, and handed off to a zoo for breeding. So we contacted the zoo and they said, why, yes, we still have those lizards. They've never bred, and you are welcome to come and photograph our lizards, but you'll need a check for $5,000. I'm not naming the zoo. So that was a hard no. And then we remembered that our buddy and colleague, Charles Drost with USGS, has been studying these for decades. And so we contacted Charles and he said, yeah, come on out on my annual survey. And so we did. We had to get DOD clearance, but, and this is San Nicolas Island here from the air. So the Navy flew us out there, put us up. We worked all of Charles's transects and collected data on lizards. We had access to every possible variation of island night lizard that we wanted to photograph. So not all those made it into the book, but that's, I think, most of what we photographed. So we had adults, juveniles, striped, spotted, regen tails, original tails, pretty cool stuff. So we went from, you know, being asked to fork over $5,000 to photograph geriatric lizards to this. Not bad. Now there's a garter snake in coastal California. It's a subspecies of Thamnophis elegans, or the western terrestrial garter snake. And this particular subspecies is called the coast garter, Thamnophis elegans terrestris. And south of Monterey Bay, they look like the lower animal, no red in the pattern. North of Monterey Bay, they've got red in the pattern. Well, there's a third phenotype that somebody dubbed flame phase. that's in the Santa Cruz Mountains. So we put out the word that we needed a flame-phase garter snake. And so we had all kinds of people looking, biologists, herper dudes. And for 2+ years, nobody is turning up a flame-phase garter. And we're kind of coming down to our deadline for getting this book thing into the publisher. Still no flame-phase garter. And then in a 24-hour period, 3 different people completely independently found a flame-phase garter. I mean, my phone is like, look at this. And it was so exciting. So that's what it looks like. And you can see that there's no way we could have gone forward without that amazing looking snake. So it worked out.
Was there much variation between the three?
There probably is, and those, but those are the endpoints, and that's what we wanted to depict. So, among the 3 that were found, no, they were all spectacular. Yeah, this beautiful red sides. They're quite distinctive. So I have no idea what's going on genetically, but what a cool animal. Also, for you desert lizard folks, there's of course 3 species of Gambelia in the US. And shown on the map there in the orange, that's the blunt-nosed leopard lizard, federally endangered, endemic to the San Joaquin Valley. And then, of course, the widespread Gambelia wislesinii. And then we've got this thing from Baja that, you can see there at the very bottom of that map in red, it just sneaks in across the California border. And it's apparently extirpated from the area there shown in circle for a variety of reasons, probably cats in people's homes and too many roads, but it's still present along the border. There's a super wary leopard lizard, which is unusual in my experience for leopard lizards. These things can spot you from quite a ways off, and they just dive into this thick vegetation. So you kind of need to drive. This is the border wall here with the road, and you got to drive along that with binoculars and hope to spot one out on the road, and then see which section of thick veg it's run into. And then you need just like an expert person with a fishing pole who can thread all those branches and extract one of these amazing lizards. And so we got several. Adult male shown on the top, a gravid female there in the middle, and then a hatchling. So these are really distinctive animals. I think they have a different breeding phenology than our other leopard lizards, but it's completely unstudied. So this female was late in the summer and she was gravid. So I don't know what's going on. Are they multi-clutching? Is it just a whole different seasonal thing? I don't know. And then of course, putting everything together and then a year later, your author copies of the book arrive. So you're pretty excited. And again, you can see proofs as PDFs or whatever, but there's nothing like having something in hand and thinking, wow, this turned out pretty cool. 942 color photos. So you can imagine how many, shutter iterations it took to end up with that. And of course, all of Jackson's incredible artwork. This came out in January 2025. It's already in its 2nd printing. And so we've had lots of really nice reviews, both published and then just people on social media. It's been really gratifying. But I want to share one that came in the mail from an 8-year-old. And I don't know if you can read his handwriting, but it says, "Dear Mr. Hansen, your book has taught me so much about my leopard gecko." Okay. "It has also inspired me to journey out and find loads of animals. Comparing our lizard to others in your book has helped me gain an understanding of the whole class of animals. Thank you very much for your beautiful oasis of knowledge. Love, Luca." So, and then Luca included his artwork here. So that is the best kind of review any author could hope for. I want to conclude with a couple of points. And one is that the age of discovery is not over. I mentioned that, we're still growing at the rate of about 4.5 species per decade. So that's, whatever. Again, these are all new things found just in the last few years, none of which are described yet. And what's next? Well, I don't know if it's foolish or not, but we signed on again with Princeton University Press to do a new Western US and Canada field guide. That began March of last year. Our delivery date is 2027. publication probably in 2028 if we make it. We're needing lots of help, and I know some of you are already volunteering to help out, but we have 380 species to cover. So California was 209. We expand that to 380 and obviously have to cover a lot more ground. The other thing I want to end on is this slide that is semi-intentionally illegible. These are names of people that are in the acknowledgements of our book. Some of you are listed there. There's a lot of folks. And to end up with a book that I think ours turned out pretty good, you need a lot of help. And not only in rounding up stuff, but also people sharing unpublished work, reviewing range maps, reviewing species accounts. And we had the full gamut of the California herp community, some of whom are here in Arizona, helping out, from the folks that I lovingly call the snake chasers, to museum curators, to PhD faculty, and everybody in between. So probably 260 or 70 people involved in making this all happen. And really, that was the most gratifying thing, is just the broad enthusiasm and excitement and eagerness to participate. And as I've encountered folks since the book has come out, and they recognize a certain animal that they collected and was photographed by us, that's pretty cool. And in a couple of cases, those were young kids, and they're pretty proud that their animal, in this case, their snake, ended up in the book. So with that, I thank you for your kind attention. And if there's any questions, either here or via Zoom, I'll be happy to try and answer them. Thank you. Yes, Robert?
I've looked through the guide. It's the quality of the photos, print quality of the photos is really impressive.
So can people on Zoom hear you?
Oh.
So I will just briefly paraphrase what you said. And Robert was complimenting the, I think, production quality of the book. And I will say, Princeton University Press, in our opinion, is now the gold standard of field guides. They really did a nice job, every aspect of it. So
Stop this share so we can look at people's comments.
okay.
So you'll be able to see questions here.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I just read a paper about biofluorescence in amphibian larvae. And I was just thinking about, did Jackson look at them under UV?
No, I think there's a lot of interest in that, though, across diverse groups of organisms. I think some of it we've seen posted on social media, but I'm not sure.
Get away.
Seriously looking into that.
Come on, away. Over here.
All right. We can hear you all.
Mike, you had a
Yeah. Species accumulation curve was really interesting. At a certain point, it became kind of an almost straight line. Why? I would have expected perhaps a little bit more of an exponential line, accumulation of population over time, or something. Number one, it was kind of interesting why it didn't like accelerate, or why.
Well, you had the low hanging fruit, right? If you and I took a trip to an island that has never been visited by naturalists, so everything we find is new. So we get to describe it, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we're adding to our species accumulation curve, but it's a burst. And at some point, we're going to run out of new things to find.
Yeah.
And unless, it's this super low density cryptic things.
Sure. Yep.
So lots of good faces here on Zoom. Thank you guys for tuning in, seeing lots of friends. Hey, Ron. Yes, Wade.
Do you think that accumulation of species curve is due to the breeding of various species from all over the world for sale in the United States, going around from state to state? I mean, there's lots of people doing this today.
Yes.
Buy them, their parents buy them, they take them home, they have them for, until they run out of those crickets, and then they let them go in the backyard. And I've been concerned about that, and I've heard little things popping up here and there. but I'll bet that's the basis of that curve.
Yeah, and
That's
yeah,
about 1970 was about when that started, that economic sphere began to take place. And try to find something that's economically paying off in this country. And it doesn't matter what other consequences are.
so for the Zoom folks, Wade's comment had to do with what kind of proportion of our species accumulation curve is related to exotics. Offhand, I don't know, but we're over 30 species for California. And again, that curve showed that that's not leveled off at all. I think that's going to continue. But yeah, it's pet releases. Perhaps in some cases, it's people releasing an animal that they want to have a ready supply of feeder lizards for pet snakes. In one case, a couple of, actually, I think if Greg Pauly were here talking to us about exotics, he's at LA County Museum. Greg is kind of the exotics guy for Southern California and really keeps tabs on stuff. A lot of it is related to pet dealer locations. So some of the things in our book are literally living outside the building or in the parking lot, but they're reproducing outside of a couple of breeder operations, commercial sales places. And they just, stuff. And then one was the result of a law enforcement action and stuff just got away. So, yeah, it's not good. Robert?
Comment about anything on climate change, like in all of your time in California and herping California, is there anything that stands out in terms of the changes you've seen that might be attributable to climate change?
So Robert's question, have we seen any evidence that climate change is impacting herps in California? It's tough to know because at least with high elevation frogs, it's confounded by chytrid fungus. So it's difficult to tease some of those things out. I think we're seeing impacts of, like where I live in the Sierra Nevada foothills, a couple hours south of Yosemite. In the 30 years I've been on that property, we're not seeing very many gopher snakes. We're not seeing very many king snakes. We have longer term droughts. The pit vipers do fine. And that's kind of generally been my experience out in the desert as well. Rattlesnakes seem to be doing okay. Colubrid snakes do not. We have breeding pools that are not filling in winter. So common garter snakes that are very much dependent on explosive breeding anurans. Those populations are in a boom and bust mode, and you just don't know, how long that can continue. Elevational shifts are one of the predictions, of course, for reptiles in particular. It's too early for us to see that. We're seeing it with plants, very definitely, and also lack of recruitment of seedlings of certain things that are in the mountains but the herp stuff is going to lag just generation time and not that many people paying attention to it. Yeah, Larry?
I was just curious about the sandstone night lizard.
Yes.
Is that with Rod Blevins? Should we follow it up on what turned out to be a second population? It's quite a few years ago. And I looked on your map and it describes that as a new species.
Not a new, okay.
What is that?
So Larry's question was, what about this, I think we call it a Fish Creek night lizard, which is it's not necessarily a thing, but it's still an open question. So there's a population that is way out in the desert. It's isolated, and there's some work that's been done that is suggestive. I won't spill the beans at this point, but we felt we at least wanted to make reference to it. We did not have a specimen to photograph, so there's no otherwise mention. I think maybe in the either the Gracilis account or Henshaw account, there's probably mention of it.
That's where we saw it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I know. No, there's actually been a talk given at a herp conference about it. So it's not a secret, but taxonomic resolution is pending. So let's see, anybody? Okay, so Mateo asks, can you go into some of the brink of description critters? Any comments on the recent wet years? Okay, so this is a great question, especially revealing some of the more obscure caudates. So what happened in the winter of, what was it, 21 to 22? we got dumped on, especially all across Southern California, record rainfall. And if you can envision, so the genus Batrachoceps, slender salamanders, I know they're not everybody's thing. They're really exciting though for me. Not a lot of diverse morphology, but some of these are living in places you would never expect salamanders. Now remember, they're terrestrial breeders, right? So they're completely independent of surface water. So they can be hanging out in a boulder field out in Anza Borrego Desert State Park, and you would never know that they were there unless you went out at just the right narrow seasonal window, or you're out walking around at night in springtime or winter. But they're there and they're perfectly happy, but they're underground. Well, that record rainfall winter caused a number of us, there aren't that many of us who are part of this Batrachoceps club, but to say, hey, we need to be getting out there and looking in these places. So one of the really happy success stories was the rediscovery of the desert slender salamander, which was thought to be extinct. It was found not in the original two places. They're completely gone from those, but at a new location. And I told Jackson at the outset, you're going to have to paint one of these because we're not going to photograph one. They're gone. So he is busy painting one. And then lo and behold, this new population was discovered. There were permits issued by Fish and Wildlife to collect. So I got to photograph everything that came out of the field. And that worked out really nice. So there's a couple other things, desert things that were found that look to be new. And so those are going to be appearing. So that's kind of the rainfall, winter rainfall results. Some other things though, web-toed salamanders, genus Hydromates, those are some legitimately new discoveries in very remote, unusual locations. And so, Robert?
Are they direct developers?
Yes, well, they lay eggs, they BB-size eggs, very similar to snail eggs, in a moist environment, underground. Unless you're in the wet coastal zone, you almost never find Batrachoceps eggs. There's one species though that is semi-aquatic, the relictual slender salamander, where you find eggs routinely in these seepages, and that is so unusual for a California salamander.
I think we're gonna invite you back to talk about Batrachoceps.
Well, that'll be a very small group, I think. Here in Arizona, man, it's snakes and lizards, right? And desert tortoises, Taylor.
A few frogs.
A few frogs, yeah. A lot of good raynids and crowgaster and kinds of cool things. Yes.
What was the most interesting thing that you learned while during this process?
So the question is, what is the most interesting thing that I learned or we learned in this process? California this isn't necessarily a herp answer, but California is an incredibly diverse state. I mentioned literally 1 week, I'm in the northwestern corner, Crescent City. You can't get much farther north and still be in California. You're right by the ocean. There's not a lot of sunshine. It rains a lot. There's a lot of ferns and moss and redwood trees, and there's salamanders galore. And then a week later, I'm down at the Mexican border, and I'm still in California, and completely different landscape, fundamentally different herp community, obviously. But that just drove home the point that for some of us who have friends that are always bad-mouthing California, there's nothing quite like it when it comes to a super biodiverse place. All right, I think that's it for Zoom. That unless anybody else? Let's see. This is from. Let's see, Robert. Oh, here we go.
Unmute this person.
Oh, nice message from Ron Savage. Thank you, Ron. Appreciate your help in Mexico way back when.
Yeah, that was quite a trip. I think that was the last major herping expedition I was on in Mexico, actually. We'll have to do it again one of these days.
Yeah, we got to find some safe spots.
Yeah, right. Okay, all the best, and looking forward to seeing your new book as well. Maybe we can help out here in New Mexico.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, all right. All the best. I'm going to sign off.
All right. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Bob. Looks like, did you get everyone on Zoom?
Yep.
All
Yep.
right.
All right. Perfect. Thank you
Thanks.
so much.